Hey, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good all of that. I'm waiting for perfect. Now the Instagram live is up and the StreamYard is going. This is amazing. I'm going to look at the StreamYard camera because this is going to be for later. Anyway, and welcome back to the Word of the Week. I was checking the StreamYard library and I realized it had been since February 27th since I had actually filmed, chopped, recorded, and sent out a word of the week. So being obedient to God, I'm on it today. I'll still re-release or not really re-release, release the initial one. You'll love it. If you enjoy the musical stylings of slow jazz and upbeat jazz at 1 in the morning on a layover in Louis Armstrong Airport, that recording is going to be just for you. But anyway, man, this is Word of the Week. Welcome, welcome, welcome. If you don't know what Word of the Week is, I post this to my YouTube channel, Man Talk Monday, to the Facebook for other people. What's up, Jay? Um, but yeah, this is imagine if you could like go to Bible study and hear it from the voice of a dude from like South Central LA and like imagine the Message Bible with a voice, but it kind of sounded like Snoop in the 90s. Yeah, that's in essence what this is. So yeah, God would be dealing with me and I'm obedient to God. So I'm dropping this today. So today, man, word of the week, I'll be coming out of the NIV. So if you know me, like I own a different couple of Bibles. Um, like the KJV is like the super OG version. Like that's the version your grandma had. Like the folk who was saved. Like they read that King James with all of the thou, doth, knoweth, all like the TH words are in there. Like that super OG. I was like, I have one of those, but I prefer to read the NIV. Like I consider the NIV kind of like the remix. You know, it's the NIV is like a sample on a track. Like you got a really good song that you like, ooh, they use that sample good. That's the NIV. The NIV is like a song you really like, but they use a real dope sample. The KJV is like whatever you were listening to, your mom and it was listening to, your grandmama listened to, it was like in the 70s and 80s, and then Kanye or somebody whose name I won't use because of current things going on in the news right now, like how they would sample things. Um, and then you have the Message Bible, which if you somebody who read the Message Bible, you 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 a real one if you like the Message Bible, because the Message Bible is like I view the Message Bible as like if my sister were like to go into a pulpit and talk to people, that's the Message Bible, like straightforward. Like I'm not like we gonna clear this. Like I feel like the Message Bible is this close to like having like period in there. Like that's what I feel like the Message Bible does. But anyway, NIV, big book, no small book. 1 Samuel chapter 30, specifically verse 6. And not just verse 6, but the part of verse 6 that everyone likes to read, where it says, But David found strength in the Lord his God. Now that's what it says in the NIV. In the OG version, it says David encouraged himself in the Lord. And the reason I said 1 Samuel 30 verse 6, but the end of it is because this is commonly what we do. What ends up happening is I've seen over time is instead of people like really like going into the Bible and thoroughly reading and sitting down and like thinking about it and letting God sprinkle some revelation on it and giving them some insight. Instead, what we do is we treat it like everything else we read. Like we like Cliff Notes, we like Blinkist, we like the McDonald's version. We need it quick. Yo, don't give me the whole thing. Just give me enough to sound cool. Give me enough to sound good. So I grew up in an era where my fiance regularly tells me, "You really an old man." And I'm like, I mean, yeah, I got first cousins who were like 50 plus. Like, and then I grew up with their kids. Like, I have living relatives in their 80s and 90s. Like, I can remember a time of riding around where, all the kids was in the front seat, wasn't no seatbelts, wasn't no car seats. Dangerous times. This was the 90s. So it's not like super long ago, but I'm kind of in that in between era of old slash young. I'm like, like kind of an uncle, but not quite an uncle, but literally an uncle. You know, like younger dudes who I would work would be like, "Oh man, what's good, OG? What's good, Unc?" I'm like, "Oh my God, Unc!" And like my back and my knees immediately started hurting. And I'm like, "How old are you?" "Oh, you know, Unc, I just turned 18." I'm like, "I'm a whole 2 decades older than this kid. Like this is wild." But that in between era has kind of allowed me to, even from a standpoint of like church and how I've maneuvered being a Christian, the good and the bad, like a little bit of old school, but young enough to still be able to tap in. So now, growing up in that era, I've noticed even from then to now, the one thing the old folks and the younger folk have in common is at times it was real cool to give something that rhyme or to give, a quotable. Like that's what it is. Like we cats treat the Bible almost, like it's like freestyle battle. Like, oh man, bars. So you would always hear people. I would hear my grandmother and great aunts and great uncles and pastors and bishops and apostles and fivefold, whoever, and everybody who was in the church with a title. And they would talk about David. David encouraged himself. David encouraged himself. And I feel like over the time, really sitting down, studying this verse and understanding the story behind it, the meat of it, like the real crux of the matter. Like we really doing a disservice to people, not telling them the whole story as to why David encouraged himself. Like think about it. How often were you told, "Oh man, David encouraged himself, David. David, when it was tough, David encouraged himself." And it was like that's not enough context to really understand what he did. So we're so quick to go to First Samuel 36, skip that first part, get to the end of the encouragement, to where it's like, yo, people would really be like, God told me, He said, "Do you know how much people would be encouraged? They really understood the madness that David was dealing with, and how every day you really could apply the encouraging to your life if you understood the context." So knowing what this is, like, when you read the NIV, it gives you like a title. So it says David destroys the Amalekites. So if you understand this story, David had came back to Ziklag, and these dudes, the Amalekites, bad guys. The Amalekites had already, hey Pete, what's going on? My sister's in here. So the Amalekites had basically ran through Ziklag. And back then in those days, it was pillaging, murder, lives. It was, how you watch Game of Thrones. Put that on dubs. Like put 10 on that. Put everything on it. Like only make it real. Like real, real. So now David comes back, and the Amalekites had kidnapped everyone. They'd taken the women, they'd taken the children. Not only had they taken the women and the children, when they got back to Ziklag, they'd realized everything had been burned down to the ground. So we took the women, we took the children, and then for good measure, we burned the whole place down. Dirt. So imagine you return home, your family's gone, your nieces, nephews, cousins, your grandmama, everybody's out. They're out of there. And not even, you really need to return home because they didn't burn that joint to the ground. Dust. There's nothing there. So it said that, but they didn't hurt them. They just took them captive. And in chapter 4, it says something that's, I think, resonates with people every day if you understood why David encouraged himself. The Bible said that David and his men wept aloud until they had no strength left to weep. You come home, the place that is you, security, safety. Despite everywhere David had been, everything that had been going on, the battles, the attrition, the men lost, or whatever the issues were, he was going home. So now he returns back, to a place where he was safe. He had wives there, he had children, he had his family, he had his people. This was his safety zone. And somebody infiltrated that and took all of that away and burned it to the ground. Now, not only him, but his men who were there, their families, everything they had, everything you come home and everything is gone. We've all been in positions where when you've been so hurt that you've cried and you've just been down and it's just pain and you're crying. And in the Bible, it said that David and these men, man, these aren't regular dudes. These are like warriors. These are men who went to battle with David. It said they cried till they couldn't cry no more. They had no energy to cry. Tear ducts were on E. They could not weep anymore. And then it said two of his wives, like I said, two of his wives gone, snatched. Verse 6, David was greatly distressed because the men were talking of stoning him. That's the beginning of the verse where it says he was encouraged. Understand, before he was encouraged, imagine you come back, you're David, you the man, you're the guy. And basically the Amalekites made David look like food. For the young people, they know what food is. Let me look at Instagram. David was looking like food out here. The Amalekites made him look real soft, real weak. So now David is looking like food. David is looking, oh man, listen, look, bro, they got my wife. They got your wives. They got the kids. And they burn the place down. David, what are you gonna do? Now, man, we've all seen, this is the social media age. Morning, see? This is the social media age. We've seen for context, we've all seen videos on social media where there's, some a woman or man or somebody intervening, like, hey man, ain't you gonna step up? Ain't you gonna do something? And now in turn, this dude like gets his head busted. He gets body slammed or power bombed circa 1994, Kevin Nash through a table because he intervenes. But now this is what's happening with David. The men around him are like, hey, look, they have our families, our children, your wives. What are you going to do? Because you, David, your name carries weight around here. Things should happen because you say it, because you're David. You one of God's people. So how is this happening? The Amalekites just came in here and did this to us. Now at the beginning of verse 6, now understand where it talks David encouraged himself. He came home, ain't no home. It's burned down to the ground. Wives gone, children gone. The men who trust him to keep him safe in this home, their leader, looks soft out here because they burned down the city and kidnapped all of the people, and who knows what things could happen. Now, these men who fought next to him, who were his ride or die guys, all of his bros, are now plotting in verse 6. They're plotting, going, hey, listen, we're thinking of getting you out here. They thought of stoning David because in this moment, who he said he was wasn't. Now they're thinking of stoning him. They're thinking of killing him. And what does David do at the end of verse 6? But David found strength in the Lord his God. David encouraged himself. Now we get to the thing that the old folks you talk about. Now that you have context, understanding that David had lost it all, understanding that David in his place of safety was not safe, understanding wholly that even the people who were the closest to him, people who had went to battle and fought next to him, were now looking to turn on him because he looked like food in the streets. He had this moment of weakness. David, with all of the things around him, was left with nothing. All the folk who was riding for him now wanted to stone him. Ziklag burned down, wives gone, children gone. We've been here. Job tripping, supervisor tripping, husband tripping, wife tripping, kids an issue, court, random bills, all of just the weight of the world was on David. He was already 2 verses before crying until he couldn't cry anymore. And there are those of us who've been in the spot where we like, how can this get any worse? I've cried. Lord, I ain't got no more tears to cry. I'm done. I don't want to keep crying. I don't even, my ducts can't even form the salt and the moisture to cry anymore because life is rough. Because even the people around me seem like they want to stone me. They don't, I'm not getting the love I need. I'm not getting the affirmation, my job, the bills, the weight of the world on you. And David encouraged himself in the Lord. He thought of all of the things, the other quotables, if you will. You know what? God has been doing pretty good. He's been batting 1,000 my entire life. God has never forsaken me. He doesn't send out a word that returns void. He's not a man that he would lie. I've never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. David thought of all of these things. He brought us out of Egypt, parted seas, like, and he sat there and encouraged himself in that. And then he looked at Abathar's priest. Yo, Big A, bring me the ephod. So now, with all of the world on his shoulders, what does David do? with everything crashing down around him, he goes, God has been good. I believe he gonna keep being good. Hey, bring me the E5, bro. Yeah. It's prayer season. It's prayer season. Think about that. The madness of this, to the world crashing down around you in an instant. Because said he arrived in Ziklag and everything was burned down and the people were taken. And the men who loved him and trusted him, who went to battle with him, wanted and contemplated taking his life, everything on his shoulders. And instead of folding, this dude said, man, God been good. He ain't gonna forsake me. Bring me the ephod. It's prayer time. It's prayer season. They said he went and he inquired to the Lord. And the thing that he asked him, the Bible says, shall I pursue this raiding party? Will I overtake them? Translation, hey, look, God, they didn't got my ladies, they didn't got the kids, they didn't got all my folks. Do I need to go after them? And when I do, am I going, I'm gonna win this thing or no? Am I going to end up victorious if I chase after them? And God said, go get it. Not only, not only, not only should you go after them, but you'll certainly overtake them and succeed in rescue. David took his men, 600, 200 wasn't 200 wasn't ready, or 200 were exhausted. And of course, if you continue to read the story, they came across an Egyptian slave who'd been left behind, who knew the position of the Amalekites, and they just happened to run into dude, gave him some food and water because he'd been fasting. So now, not circumstance. I tell people I don't believe in coincidence. They just, it didn't just happen that they run into this Egyptian who was attached to the raid party, that it came and snatched all the kids and the wives and money and the gold and burned the city down. No, David runs into them. They give him food, water, drink, provide him what he needed. He was like, let me show y'all where they at, and immediately showed them. Not only did they overtake them, they got back that and then some. So that's it. We're done. It's your word of the week, encourage. The reason I say this is your word of the week, encourage, is because not just telling people, hey, encourage yourself because David did, but understanding why David encouraged himself. And understanding not just why he did it, not just the weight of the world on his shoulders, but how he reacted to it. He could have been pissed. He could have been upset. He could have cursed God. He could have did all of those things. But instead, after encouraging himself, after finding strength in God, he immediately went into prayer mode, sought the face of the Lord. Do I need to go get these dudes? Absolutely. And not only do you need to go after them, you can come out better on top of the head. You definitely gonna beat them. And he wins. He gets everything in the end. So when I say encourage is the word of the week, don't think about this moment. The world is heavy. There will always be issues. You always gonna have a bill. It's always gonna be somebody at the job because the devil stay busy. Your job in this moment, on this day, is to think of all of the amazing things God has done in the past. Some people say, oh, well, that was God then. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. He's unchanged. And the old folks had it right, where they would tell you, you've got to hold on to God's unchanging hand. Hold on. It's literally right there. It's in the book. David encouraged himself, went into prayer. Bring me the ephod. It's hell out here in these streets, but my God is good. How do I handle this, Lord? This how you gonna handle it, and it's gonna turn out great. And the exact way that God told him. It told him, yeah, pursue them, and you will certainly overtake them and succeed in the rescue. The exact thing that God told him was going to happen happened. I mean, batting 1,000. The way the old folks say, "What a mighty God what a mighty God we serve." That's your word of the week. Encourage. Don't overthink your current situation. Don't let the right now this instance of you're arriving in your Ziklag, you're at work and you're underappreciated, you're at home and there's not love, you're struggling with marriage, drugs, issues, life, bills, debt, provision, all of those things. Take them all and sit back and think of how good God has been in the past. And once you do, you're effectively able to encourage yourself because you know that the God you serve will get it done. Get your ephod on, seek his face, and he'll give you the answer. He'll provide you the way. He will tell you that thing that you need to go and pursue and overtake. And when he tells you, you better be obedient because too many times in the Bible, folk didn't have to do it. David didn't have to put on the ephod. David didn't have to seek the face of God. David didn't have to take the Lord into consideration. But in doing so, he overtook the Amalekites and secured more than even he had in the first place. So encourage yourself. I encourage you in these moments where it's heavy, cast your cares on him. Seek his face. Get your ephod on, man. It's ephod season. But that's all. Encourage yourself because that's what David did. He didn't just encourage himself, he encouraged himself in the midst of the problem, in the face of the burned down city, while hearing of the kidnapped people, surrounded by those who wanted to stone him, he yet encouraged himself. Encourage yourself on this week. I love y'all. Stay safe. Be well. Peace.